Back in 1968, I was asked to take part in an experiment to see if you could use television to teach preschool children. We all figured it might last a few seasons at most, but here we are. Sesame Street is still going strong. Anyhow, tonight we're going to look back over those years. It's a very different kind of birthday party, and you're all invited. Why, thank you. I'm sorry. You were talking to them, right? No, actually, you have to go get changed, all right? Because it's time for us to start the show.
50 years ago, children's television changed forever with a show with people and Muppets called Sesame Street. Sesame Street then became a phenomenon, with a 50-year run on PBS so far, and a 4-year run on HBO so far. Over millions of DVDs sold, millions of merch, and even 2 theatrical films. With a third coming in 2021. Sesame Street teaches us letters and numbers and helps children get ready for school. Of course, Sesame Street's in pop culture. As we celebrate 50 years of Sesame Street, we're going to take a look back at the 50 years of the program so far and see what makes Sesame Street the friendliest street. The year was 1966, when Joan Gans Cooney did a feasibility study on children and television for the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Then the following year, in 1967, Joan Gans Cooney became a television consultant to Carnegie, and the decision is made to pursue a television project for preschool children. New children's show was in production. Then in 1968, press conference announced establishment of the Children's Television Workshop, with Joan Gans Cooney serving as executive director for the company. And after being named executive director for the company, Cooney assembled a team of producers to help create the show. Then in 1969, the Muppets and Jim Henson were assigned to the show. The producers and writers decided to build the new show around a brownstone on an inner city street. And of course, the new show was called the Preschool Educational Television Show and Promotional Materials. Of course, the producers could not agree on a name they liked and waited till the last minute to make a decision in a short promotional film.
Say something about the show, telling it like it is. Yeah. Maybe the nitty-gritty little kitty show.
Yeah, that's not bad. You know,
I like that, you know, but little kitty can mean any child up to the age of 7 or 8. Now, I think we should aim this show right at the preschooler.
Well, then, how about the itty-bitty, nitty-gritty little kitty show?
Like that?
The producers were reportedly frantic for a title. They finally settled on the name that they least disliked.
Sesame Street. You know, like Open Sesame?
Sesame Street. I love it. The kids will love it.
It was decided that the name would be Sesame Street, inspired by Alibaba's magical phrase, Although there were concerns that it would be too difficult for young children to pronounce, Stone was one of the producers who disliked the name, but he said I was outvoted, for which I am deeply grateful. The responsibility of casting for Sesame Street fell to John Stone, who set out to form a cast where white actors were in the minority. He did not begin auditions until spring 1969, several weeks before 5 test shows were due to be produced. He filmed the auditions and Palmer took them into the field to test children's reactions. For example, Loretta Long was chosen to play Susan when the children who saw her auditions stood up and sang along with their rendition of I'm a Little Teapot. Stone reported that casting was the only aspect that was completely haphazard. Most of the cast and crew found jobs on Sesame Street through personal relationships with Stone and the other producers. Stone hired Bob McGrath, an actor and singer best known at the time for his appearances on Mitch Miller's sing-along show on NBC to play Bob, Will Lee to play Mr. Hooper, and Garrett Saunders to play Gordon. In July 1969, Sesame Street had their test pilot episodes. The test pilot episodes aired on NET. Because the test pilot shows are lost, only the first one is still available today. On the Old School Volume 2 DVD as a bonus feature. Despite all that, the test pilot episodes were a huge success. But there were few concerned over the test pilot episodes. But they would make the changes as well. So what they had to do was, the producers reshot the street segments. Henson and his co-workers created Muppets that could interact with the human actors, specifically Oscar the Grouch and Big Bird, who became 2 of the show's most enduring characters. In addition, the producers found that Garrett Saunders' role as Gordon not to be as likable by children watching the show, resulting in the character being recast by Matt Robinson, who was initially the show's filmed segment's producer. After the test pilot episodes of Sesame Street was getting ready for their premiere in November of 1969. Then in November 1969, they were getting ready to promote Sesame Street. And 2 days before the show came out, a primetime special called This Way to Sesame Street aired on NBC. A preview of then on the morning of November 10th, 1969, children's television changed forever when Sesame Street premiered on national educational television, the precursor to PBS. This right here, as you can see here, this is how the very first Sesame Street began. It made its debut on November 10th, 1969, 50 years ago. Now, over the years on Sesame Street, since the show made its debut on November 10th, 1969, and it's still on TV today, the cast would expand, and the set would change, but what would stay the same is the question: can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
Sally, you've never seen a street like Sesame Street. Everything happens here. You're gonna love it. They play games. Hi, Bob.
Hi. How are
Say
you
hello to
today,
Sally.
buddy?
She just moved into the neighborhood.
Hi, Sally. How
That's
are you?
Bob.
Nice to see you.
And that-
Greetings, my friend.
That's
I'm
Mr. Hooper.
Oh, Mr. Hooper. Here's the dime for your paper. Thank you.
See, come here, Mr. Hooper. Come here. Say hello to Sally.
Hello, Sally.
Sally's new. She just moved into the neighborhood.
Welcome, new Sally.
That's Mr. Hooper.
Season 1, the first season of Sesame Street, introduces such characters as Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, Bert, Ernie, Bob, Gordon, Susan, and Mr. Hooper, and precursors of Cookie Monster and Grover appear also. During the first season of Sesame Street, James Earl Jones appeared on the show as its first celebrity guest to appear on Sesame Street. And by the end of the first season, Sesame Street won the George Foster Peabody Award, 3 Emmy Awards, and the Prix Junies Award.
Sesame Street is a production of the Children's Television Workshop.
is NET, the Public Television Network.
Coming up in part 2, in the Friendliest Street, Sesame Street enters its first full decade, the 1970s.